Safe. If you want to just keep it because other folks are going to speak in succession.
Thank you, President-elect Dane. Good afternoon, my fellow Rotarians and guests. Thanks so much for being with us today. It's a pleasure and an honor to welcome you all to this first meeting of the new Rotary year here at the Rotary Club of West Jacksonville. If you're like me and you're joining us by Zoom, I'd ask that you please mute yourself while others are speaking, but do please feel free to participate in the meeting by sending any questions or comments you have to us via chat. Now, if you will stand as you are able and join us for the invocation that will be given by Mark Eldridge and the pledge, which will be led by Tim Alters.
Right, take two. Good afternoon, welcome. And it's good to have this technology, Sean, that you could be leading us via the Zoom. I'm honored to be able to give the invocation on this kickoff of our new Rotary year. So let us pray. Father, we come to you again and give you thanks for this organization called Rotary and for its founding, its continuing, and its motto to have service above self. I pray that you would help us as a club in this new year under Sean's leadership to really put that into practice and in practical ways to put service above self to meet the needs of those around us as you would have us to do. Bless this meeting today. Thank you for the food we just ate. And I pray all this in your name. Amen. of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And thanks to our greeters today. We appreciate that. And I do apologize, I'm not there with you today. I'd love to be there, but I'm fulfilling a promise to a 14-year-old niece. So I know that you all understand that. They tend to have long memories. So, and I do appreciate the fact that we have the technology to make this happen. So thanks to everybody there on the ground at Timuquana, and appreciate our AV crew and Dane, President-elect Dane, for taking care of things there. So thank you so much. We have a few pop-ups today. First, I'd like to call on past President Ike, which I know that's a title that he's enjoying. And he has a presentation he would like to make. Ike?
Thank you, President Sean. Not every year, but a lot of years, we bestow a couple of awards to West Jax Rotary members. And we typically do it at President Night. And this year, Palmer Bell was recognized for the J.J. McCraney Award for service to the club. So once again, here for Palmer. We also at times bestow an award named after Robert Shercliffe. Bob Shercliffe, one of the founding members and an institution in Jacksonville in our club. And the Bob Shercliffe Award recognizes club members from West Jax Rotary that excel in the community, lead in the community, and really exemplify our values outside in Jacksonville. And this year's Robert Shercliffe Award winner is Shepherd College.
Thanks so much, Ike, and congratulations, Shep. Well deserved. Thank you so much for all you do for our club and for and through Rotary. Our next pop-up, I'd like to call on Lee Davis.
Okay, hello, fellow Rotarians. I kind of have a strange or different request today. Our good friend Jimmy Kelly has been very sick with COVID for a long time now, and he's in the hospital. And he's not doing that well without going into a bunch of details. But everyone knows that sometimes you can get better just by having your friends tell you to get better and laughter and all that. So because of our modern technology today, I was wondering if I could flip my phone around and we all say, get well soon, Jimmy. So give me just a second here, please, if y'all don't mind. And I'll just send him this and that'll make him feel better. He was going to try to get on by Zoom today, but he's not feeling well. So, all right, so I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and we'll all say, get well, Jimmy. 1, 2, 3. Get well, Jimmy. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks for doing that. And if you would all please keep Jimmy in your thoughts and prayers. We all know that that helps. And if you would just please do that. Thank you. And thanks again, Lee. And the third thing, just wanted to remind you all that the Rotary Leadership Institute is coming up on August the 6th. It'll be held down at the Daytona State College in Palm Coast. The registration deadline is July the 27th. So if you have an interest in attending that, please let Patty or someone know so that we can get you registered for that. I believe that they will be offering all parts of that. So any part that you still need to take, part 1, 2, or 3, or the transforming your graduate class, they'll be offering all parts of that then. Again, that's the RLI class, Saturday, August the 6th at the Daytona State College down in Palm Coast. And those of us that have taken any of the parts will attest to the fact that it's very informative. And I would strongly encourage all of our members to participate if you can make the time to do that. So this week's Family of Rotary report will be given by Palmer Bell. Palmer?
Thank you, President Sean. The reason I'm here today is because Alton Yates, who would be on our Family of Rotary reports for July, has COVID. And so a continuing theme of all of this is any number of us either have had COVID recently or know someone who's had COVID recently. We in Duval County are in what they call the red zone again. So please take care of yourselves, rest when you can. I hope Alton gets better quickly. Jimmy Kelly and I spoke about a week before he went in the hospital, and he was convinced he was on the upswing, and clearly he is not. So don't take it for granted if you end up feeling, even if it just feels like you're having a cold, it can be something much more serious. So just a word to the wise on that. Birthdays this week: July 11th was Scott Hudson. Yesterday was John Runyon. And on the 18th, Larry Daly. So congratulations to all you for birthdays. Seeing the awards that were given out on President's Night and now again today reminds us that the Rotary motto is alive and well, not just in this particular section of Rotary, but really throughout the Rotary world. And we have a couple of reminders, local and then a little broader this week. Jeff Collins is currently over in Ireland doing a bike ride. He's raising funds through his bike ride for the Ukrainian efforts. Larry Daly pointed out this past week that our good friend Pat Mulholville was recognized. There's a long article, if you have not seen it, in the Resident newspaper about Pat and his work through the humanitarian and disaster relief, and also his work through the veterans to honor veterans on Memorial Day. He was in charge, and you have to read the article because it goes on for a very long time about all the efforts. But among the things that he did was organize 22,000 flags to be placed at the National Cemetery here in Jacksonville. But go ahead and read that article if you would. And then finally, the Volunteer Florida boards that recognize Florida's leading volunteerism and high impact national service awards this year recognized for 2022 one of our own, and Meredith Smith. So I don't know if Meredith is here. She's not here today, but Meredith Smith was honored for the state of Florida for that award. And then in honor of your passing out of one leadership role into another, Ike, I know you love rock music and often is seen going to rock concerts. So you might remember, especially if you're older, that when the Monkees were really popular, yes, Monkees? Before your time? There was a real question about whether the Monkees could even play the instruments they were shown holding. But I did notice that there's a rock group, in fact, 4 very popular rock stars. And we know that they can't play instruments and that they don't sing a note. Their group name, Mount Rushmore.
Love it, Palmer. Love it. Good one. Thank you so much. And thanks for that Family of Rotary report. And I see that Alton is joining us remotely. So Alton, we're all thinking about you and we hope you start feeling better soon. So take care of yourself. Palmer, you're too much. Okay, Sergeant of Arms Carter Rosenblum is going to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians. Take it away, Carter.
Thank you, President Sean. Palmer, that was a great joke. I'd like to follow up with one too. As many of you know, my grandfather, he was an entrepreneur. He tried to create a thing called the cold air balloon. It just never really took off.
Good one to start the year, Carter. Good one.
It's a great honor to be up here. Who wouldn't want to follow up after Raul? Not too much to live up to there, but it is great. It's great to follow up after somebody who put their heart and soul into this and is still doing a great job. So can we get a round of applause for Raul and the job he did last year? And also thank you to our gurus putting on the Zoom meeting for us, Larry and Joe Springer. So we have a lot of guests today. It's a great day for Rotary. Mike Pendergast, you have one guest that you would like to introduce? It's great to have you today. And Will Croft has a guest.
But my beautiful wife, the CEO and CFO of my house, Maria.
And Carl Dawson also has a guest.
I'd like to introduce my daughter, Emily.
And Raul Sharma has two guests to introduce for us today. One very special guest.
Thank you, Carter. Thank you, Dane, for being the runner as such an important role, making sure we can all be heard. Welcome back to Rotary West Jacksonville, Chief Advancement Officer from the Bowles School, Carol Nimitz. Carol, please stand. Welcome. The property manager, accountant for Morales Group, Morgar Realty, but there's more to add to this. My much better half, it's unanimous. If this was a tennis match, this would be a straight set victory. Helene Sharma, 6-love, 6-love, 6-love. Helene, please stand. Thank you, Helene. A very special introduction, which we will do momentarily, but the global outreach of Rotary, bringing our own Rotary South Jacks here with us today, Julia Kalinski. Julia, please stand. Welcome. Welcome. Carter, back up to you at the podium.
Thanks, Raul. And we have a few more visiting Rotarians. Tracy Jinks with Southjax Rotary. Rotary Club of Jacksonville. And Kendall Wilson with Downtown Rotaract. Madison Shelley with the Rotary Club of Jacksonville. And last but not least, we have our speaker today, Julia Kalinski with Southjax Rotary. Without further ado, I would like to bring up Raul to introduce our speaker today, Julia Kalinski.
How about a round of applause for our Sergeant at Arms for this year, Carter Rosenblum. Well done. You know, as we share the Rotary story, our global outreach from all across the world, putting service above self, we are about to be inspired. We're about to be humbled. And I can all share on behalf of all of us, we're about to receive a world-class perspective. My colleague from the Bowles School, Julia Kalinski, a graduate of the University of North Florida, earned her education degree in psychology with a minor in social welfare, and returned to UNF to continue her education in public administration with a concentration in nonprofit management in 2016. Julia has worked really hard in our community the past 14 years, serving in progressively responsible positions, serving Daniel Kids. What a fine organization Daniel Kids is, Florida's oldest child serving nonprofit organization. She transitioned from Director of Development at Daniel Kids to Director of Alumni Engagement at the Bowles School last year. In her first year at Bowles, Julia made an immediate impact. She worked with a stellar team to double alumni participation in philanthropic giving, making it the highest in recorded history of the institution. Julia is currently a member of the Rotary Club of South Jacksonville and has a passion for service through connection and relationships. Julia was named to the 40 under 40 by the Jacksonville Business Journal in 2021. Speaks a lot about her leadership potential. On a personal note, Julia was born in Kyiv, Ukraine in the 1980s. She was adopted at age 14 by a Florida couple following a family tragedy. Having lived in the former Soviet Union, Julia grew up knowing that relationships and community are vital when resources are scarce. Julia will share her personal account and experience growing up in Kyiv, Ukraine with us today as it transitioned from the Soviet Socialist Republic to a sovereign nation in 1991. Fellow Rotarian brothers and sisters, please join me in welcoming to the podium here at WestJax Rotary, Julia Kalinski.
Thank you for that always dynamic introduction, Rahul. I appreciate it. And as I said earlier, it is consistent starting at 8 a.m. at work. So what I'm going to share with you today is very personal. It's very vulnerable. I consider it my charge today to speak on Ukraine, just considering what is going on. This is my contribution. This is just my way of helping. So keep that in mind. My name is Julia Sokolenko Lion Kalinski. I was born in Kyiv, part of the Soviet Socialist Republic. My first language is Russian. I was raised in Kyiv, sovereign Kyiv, and my second language is Ukrainian. I was adopted and have been a proud American citizen since 1999. I'm one of two girls in my family. Like many girls, I grew up admiring my mother. She worked as a neurologist in Kyiv. She was a trailblazer. She went to medical school in Baku, Azerbaijan, which was also part of the Soviet Union, when it wasn't very popular for women to do that. Her parents, both World War II veterans, my grandfather actually drove a tank into Berlin, supported her, and were behind her every step of the way to get a great education. In May of 1986, despite the assurance from the Soviet government that the Chernobyl incident was not a big deal to the population in Ukraine, my mother chose to put her 11-month-old baby on an airplane back to Baku, Azerbaijan, to live with her parents for 5 years, which was also part of the Soviet Union. She paid attention in science class and she chose to act. I lived in Baku for about 5 years. I don't remember much, but I remember always being drawn to the sea as it was on the coast of the Caspian Sea. I was safe and remained there until 1991 when I returned to join my family in Kyiv, just in time for the Soviet Union to fall and for my country to experience 3 different currencies. Ukrainian became the national language and was required to be spoken in all public spaces. However, we all spoke Russian because that was our native tongue. My family and many average families in Ukraine had a small home in the country. We called it the dacha. There was no running water, an outhouse, tons of nature. We ran around and had a wonderful childhood with lots of imagination. Those months were truly magic for a child's imagination. Resources were still scarce in our country, so our parents actually grew and pickled fruits and vegetables on that land. And some of our neighbors actually lived there year round. So they were the ones who held the cattle and did more of that than we did. The train stop for our dacha was the town of Bordanka. Bordanka is now reduced to rubble. After the fall of the Soviet Union, my family was issued an apartment due to my grandmother's World War II status. I watched as my mom tended to victims of Chernobyl, educated visiting physicians from Florida Hospital about the effects of Chernobyl in the 1990s. Through my mother's relationships, my sister got to participate in Rotary Youth Exchange. As a teenager, she visited Orlando. I was too young for the program. However, I also got to come and live with the family for a year as a 10-year-old. So we were there for about 1 year. During our 1 year visiting America, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. These same American physicians she educated about Chernobyl raised funds for her treatment at Florida Hospital's Walt Disney Cancer Institute, giving her an additional 2 years of life in remission. They chose to act. My mother's cancer came back in '98 after we were all back in Ukraine. She was invited back for treatment. My sister accompanied her. During her final days at 13 years of age, I flew from my home in Ukraine to Orlando in hopes of making it to say goodbye. Those hopes were unfortunately shattered when my plane landed, and she had passed 6 hours while I was in the air. I remember walking out of the airplane. It was back when we were still allowed back there, and my sister was standing at the edge of that sleeve, and we didn't speak. There was nothing to be said. We sat in a corner and watched normal life pass us by. Before I boarded that plane in Kiev, I had a last conversation with my mom, and she made it clear that her last wish for me was to remain here in America and be adopted by an American family and create a life for myself in what she called the land of boundless opportunity. That wish came true when members of a church that was helping my family adopted a 13-year-old girl. They gave that girl a great education and believed she could do anything she put her mind to. They chose to act. My adoptive parents honored my history and past. They visited Kiev with me several times. I continued to visit my grandmother for 7 years, I believe, after that, until 2012, when she passed away. Each trip I took 2 suitcases, one with my clothes and one with American things. Disney stuff, Bath and Body Works stuff, peanut butter, different things like that. When I would arrive home in Kiev, my house would smell amazing. My grandmother would be cooking for days to prepare for my visit. The table would be set with the best china that was always locked up all year. She would make a feast. Providing for her family gave her the most joy in life. She would also save every penny of her $200 a month pension because she wanted to pay for my trip to visit her each year. That money went into account for her care that she did not know about. The past 4 months, 2 weeks, and 6 days have been excruciating to watch from the comfort of my American dream at the beach. The feelings of anger, guilt, helplessness, and gratitude for my children fight for space in my mind every day. My husband and I have 2 girls now. They are 2 and 4 years old. I have many loved ones still in Kiev. I can tell you with absolute certainty that the lives that they were living until February 24th, very, very different lives from the 1980s Soviet Union. And I remember that very clearly. Friends with no government connections had an opportunity to build a life, move to their own homes, own thriving small businesses. My best friend visited me here in the United States in 2014. No, it was not perfect. Yes, corruption was still there, but the middle class was very clearly rising for the first time. Seeing a headline that the last independent news station in the Russian Federation had their final broadcast gave me chills, almost as strong as the chills I got when my cousin called me about a missile outside of her window. The Russian people are going back in time. There will be no access to diverse views, travel, growth. The future their government is seeking is the past, and freedom has no place in it, just silence. Ukraine is fighting for their freedom. It's that simple. Most of us have not experienced the Soviet Union. I have, and if anything, it's very lonely there. Access to simple things like modern medicine and technology didn't happen for me until the 1990s. We were the first people in my building to have a VCR in 1993. My first video was Fox and Hound, and I'm pretty sure it was not legally obtained. Barbie was a doll that would cost my mother her entire salary for a month. One of my favorite memories was just going to see a Barbie through a store window downtown. Nobody I knew had ever left the Soviet Union. These may seem like simple, silly things, but that was truly my reality each and every day. Today, I stand with the Ukrainian people, with my best friend of 32 years, who works for an international accounting firm and reports to colleagues in the Russian Federation on her Zoom calls when she's not running up and down the stairs of her 16-story apartment building due to an air raid siren. I also stand with my Uncle Oleg and Aunt Irina, who spent 23 days in the basement of their home in Irpin, right outside of Kiev with no electricity, running water connection, listening to an active war zone. They have returned home and are now ordering new windows and repairing part of their roof in hopes of having safe shelter for the winter. I speak to these people almost daily. They're just like you and me. I share my story because I want to emphasize the power of action where you are with what you can. The tragedy Ukraine is facing today seems overwhelming and just leaves me frozen sometimes. Then I go back and break it down. The Rotarian in Orlando did not have to connect my sister with the opportunity to come to this country to learn English, but he chose to act. The doctor who took a trip to witness the devastating effects of Chernobyl didn't have to be there for the devastating diagnosis for my mom, but she chose to act. Rod and Carol Lyon did not have to choose to adopt a 13-year-old girl, but they did. Small steps we take collectively make an enormous impact. Imagine what we can accomplish if we all choose to act. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. That was amazing. I think I speak for everybody when I say that. If you could join me up here at the podium just momentarily, we have a small gift to give you as a token of our appreciation. And Raul, if you could join us and the rest of the folks from Bowles, we'd like to take a picture. One more round of applause for Julia, please.
So thank you, Julia, for that very personal story. We now have time for some questions. If you do have a question, please raise your hand and I'll come over to you. It's important you speak into the microphone for the people on Zoom. Jeff Ludwig has a question.
If you would, describe the process that you went through, excuse me, from coming as a young girl, 13, being adopted, and then acquiring your U.S. citizenship. I know it was probably derivatively through your adoptive parents, but
yes,
talk about that for a minute.
Sure. I came to kind of on an emergency basis. So I had a tourist visa when I came to say goodbye to my mom because it was such a quick turnaround. Once I was here, my adoptive parents retained an attorney and we changed my status and pursued the adoption privately. So it took, I want to say it took about a year for the entire process to go through. It was a little complicated, but they were committed to making sure that things went through. And actually, the law is, I think, at 14, you have to go through a much larger process to become a citizen. And until 14, you're naturalized through your parents when they complete the adoption. So that worked to my advantage because my adoption was finalized right before my 14th birthday.
We have another question over here.
Going back to the war that's going on, when you talk to your friends and your relatives, are they still hopeful that this will end well, or do they think it's not going to end well? I mean, what's your take on that?
The people who are around my age are very hopeful. They formed an enormous volunteer network through this war because the infrastructure of the military in Ukraine was not a quarter of what the US has in terms of communication and providing supplies and all of that. So there are people that just switched overnight that are providing, certain supplies to certain areas that nobody can reach. So they've mobilized in that way. And so, yes, they are hopeful. A lot of people have left. Men are still not allowed to leave the country. So a lot of women are choosing to stay with their spouses and continue to help and to do what they can. But it's tough. It's tough to live that way every day. Truly in Kiev, it's pretty back to normal in a way where people are going about outside but everything, all the war things are kind of in a corner ready to be put back at any time. So all the, all those defensive things for the tanks and all of that's still there, visible, but it's not actively being used. And then the air raid sirens, I mean, those are constant. I mean, the chances of an actual situation, an attack on a building in Kiev are very slim, but that noise and that is a constant presence.
Mike.
Sorry.
What do you like best about America, and what is one of the most important parts about America?
That's an excellent question. I mean, I don't want to be cliche, but freedom, just the ability to succeed, the ability to, change things, our infrastructure, our checks and balances. I think that I've mentioned that many times over this time is we have, processes and checks and balances in place as a country that most countries only dream of. And that is a huge advantage that we don't even think about. So just the ability to work hard and be rewarded for that, that's not something you get in most places.
As fellow Rotarians with you, Julie, anything we can do at our level? I know we're not there. Is it donations? What do you recommend for the Ukrainian people?
I think the most difficult thing they're facing now is just distraction. Like there's so many other crises going on in our country and other countries, other places, but they need that support to continue to fight, not direct involvement, but they, awareness, I think, is huge. I mean, of course, donations, but just awareness of what's going on, and really what they're fighting for. I think that's the most important thing, is to continue to keep that awareness. That's why I'm here.
Shep College has a question.
No question, comment. I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with Julia for the last 6 years at Daniel as well as Bowles, and you're truly remarkable. And I want to thank you for coming today and telling this very interesting story.
Thank you, Shep.
And Gigi Carroll, the far right. Make me work for it.
Can you speak a little bit about how, about your direct knowledge with your friends and family, how education, you talked about husbands and wives, but what about children? How has education been affected? I mean, clearly there was a time where it just stopped, but now what?
Honestly, it's a challenge. There's been a lot of organizations that have focused on that specifically for children, provided, frameworks to bridge some of that gap, but it's definitely disrupted. I mean, they're learning from home. I don't know anybody who's back in school. I have 3 friends who have children, and they are educating them remotely from home. They're doing some things collectively, but so many have moved away with their kids, the women with their children, the men are still there. So it's really, it's a mess. It's a mess.
Do we have any other questions? We have a few over here. Mike Pendergast.
We're all following everything in the news. But as someone who has personal experience with Ukraine and what's going on, what's your opinion of how the media has been covering the events over there?
I get my media from lots of different sources. So I tend to not watch I haven't had regular news in my house and I don't know how long. So I read like international news, our news. I think we're doing a decent job if you're looking for it, but I don't think, I think we're not looking for it as much anymore. So I think that's the challenge. So if you want to know facts and you know where to go, it's out there. And I think they're doing a great job. But if we're not, I think that the stuff that's constant, real, I think we're starting to switch off to other things at this point.
I've read that the winter is the big time when a decision needs to be made because of the cold coming in, lack of energy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think that I think it's going to be a challenge. I think there's going to be more suffering. I think there's a lot of people who will not leave that can just because they're older and they don't want to make that decision. I know several people like that. So I think we will see that some devastating stories coming out of that in the winter, unfortunately.
Any other questions? There we go. Madison.
I'd like to echo what Shep said. I'm Madison Shelley, Chief Development Officer at Daniel. Julia and I had a wonderful work together for a number of years. We've had these conversations just about living in Ukraine. This was before the war a lot. In fact, sometimes we talked more about that than about business. But I learned so much from her, and I'm just so very proud of her for being who she is. This is emotional for me. And for continuing the fight and just bringing herself to America and showing that with hard work and fortitude, you can be who you want to be. And that's something that we all need to remember, particularly in the midst of all the political upheaval we're going through today. So Julia, thank you. Do well.
Thank you for all the questions, and thank you, Julia. We really appreciate your time here and bringing that to our attention.
Y'all please join me in a round of applause for Julia. Thank you so much, Julia, for speaking to us today. Thank you for sharing your very personal story with us. We appreciate you making the time to be with us today and sharing that story with us and using your platform in Rotary to make more of us aware of what's going on there in Ukraine. I am concerned, as you alluded, that as time goes on, we'll lose touch with that story. And I hope we don't. I hope we don't become immune to the story and lose track of it. So thank you again for sharing that with us. I'm proud of our fellow Rotarians that since this crisis started, we've raised over $15 million through the Rotary Foundation for humanitarian aid in Ukraine. And I'm proud that we've done that. And I would encourage anybody that has an interest in donating to please continue to do that and support the folks in Ukraine and during this terrible, terrible time. So, but thank you again, Julia. And if you would, y'all just join me one more time for another round of applause for Julia. And thank you again for making the time to be with us today. So a reminder that our speaker next week will be Yuen Cho from the Haymaker Coffee Company. So I invite you and encourage you to join us next week for that meeting. Our theme this year is Imagine Rotary. So as we talked on President's Night, it's not tough for me to imagine a world where Julia doesn't have to come to us and talk to us about a situation like Ukraine. So let's use that Rotary theme and try to imagine a world where we don't have a situation like Ukraine going on. So I hope you have a wonderful week and go out and do good in the world. And with that, I'll ask Gigi Carroll to lead us in the four-way test today. Gigi?
If you'll all join me in the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And if President-elect Dane will ring that bell for us, we'll call it a day. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for being with us.